We are approximately halfway in the course. The usual number of lectures that we project in a semester is normal, average is 40. It may vary from 38 to 45 if the timetable is suitable. And we look today at more closely at digital processing of continuous time signals. We have been talking about this off and on, and repetition is good so long as you repeat the truth, all right. So, and so long as you consider a very important topic and an irrelevant or unimportant topic which may be true, but repeated 100 times doesn't serve any purpose. So, since continuous time signals are the signals that we encounter in practice, it is important to have a close examination of continuous time signals and their digital processing. But before that, what we did in the last lecture was that we talked about the stability triangle for second order systems, and we also gave with proof a general procedure for testing the stability of an arbitrary order IIR transfer function, and this test was based on all pass filters. We shall come back, again this is a very important topic, we shall come back to this algorithm of constructing AM minus 1 from AMZ, that was Z Km minus AMZ divided by 1 minus Km AMZ. We shall come back to this. Pardon me? Is this okay? Km minus AMZ divided by 1 minus Km. I better not make a mistake. Sign of the numerator is? Oh, I see. It is minus Km plus AM. Okay. This is unintentional. Now, it's a very important algorithm, and we shall come back to this later when we discuss lattice realization of IIR transfer functions. But coming back to analog signals, as I had mentioned, I think in the second lecture, an analog signal is also preferred nowadays to be processed digitally because of the advantages of DSP and because DSP chips and hardware are very easily available. Now, as I had mentioned in the second lecture, I think it was the second lecture, that the analog input first has to be sampled and held. The purpose of holding, I repeat, was to allow time for A to D conversion. Each sample, in order to be converted to a binary number, it requires time, and during the time of conversion, the sample must be held at the constant value. Then the output of the A to D converter is the digital signal x of n, which is processed by the digital processor consisting of multipliers, delays and adders. And what you get at the output is a desired signal y of n, which is then to be converted back to analog through a D to A converter. A D to A converter produces a staircase like waveform, and therefore it contains high frequencies, and therefore you require at the output end an analog low pass filter, which is also sometimes called a reconstruction filter. It reconstructs the analog signal, and that's what you get at the output. Okay, these are the basic blocks of digital signal processing of an analog signal. I had also projected in the second lecture this slide showing an analog input its sampled version, a sampled version where the holding is obvious, and during this holding the signal is converted to a digital signal where I used positive pulses for 1 and negative pulses for 0. There are many other ways of representation, and then after the processing, this is the output, a typical output waveform, which also consists of ones and zeros, and then in order to convert it back to an analog signal, you require a D2A converter, the output of which is again staircase waveforms like this, exactly like the sample and hold of the input, and therefore you require to cut off the frequencies at a particular value. You require a low pass filter which eliminates the high frequencies and produces a desired analog output waveform. Now, in both A to D converter and D to A converter, the cost and the accuracy of the converter depends on the number of bits that you use. Ideally, we would have required infinite number of bits, but in practice we have to limit ourselves to finite number of bits, and this causes errors which I have not shown in that diagram. The errors are quantization errors, and they have to be treated, they have to be given the respect that is due to them. Respect because we cannot avoid them, they are necessary evils. We must show them respect and contain them. We cannot completely eliminate them, we must contain them. This would not be part of our discussions in this course. This is taken up in the second course on DSP, that is DSP 2. Now, in order that Xa of t, the analog signal, and the corresponding signal x of n, the digital signal, in order that this representation is a double sided arrow, what does it mean? That means unique, 1 to 1. That is, if x of n is given, you can reconstruct xa. If xa is given, of course you can find x of n. In order that this is true, we require the famous sampling theorem. That is, the sampling must be done. We shall have a brief look at the sampling theorem. In fact, we shall prove it in a very simple manner. In order that this is a 1-to-1 correspondence, we must sample Xa of t in an appropriate manner. And since capital X we shall use for something else, let us use a signal g, small g of A, small g of t, subscript A, analog signal. It is sampled at the rate capital T, and what you get at the output is GA NT, which after quantization, after A to D conversion, becomes G of n. And we said that since the mathematics of discrete time signals and digital signals is the same, we shall use them interchangeably. Therefore, GANT we can write as G of n without any harm, which means that there is no quantization error. If we have to consider quantization error, we shall distinguish between them in a statistical manner. That is, we cannot treat this as a deterministic phenomenon. We have to use statistical phenomena, but that, as I said, will form the topic of DSP 2. Now, let also GAT have the Fourier transform capital GA of j omega. Now, capital omega we use for analog radian frequency, that is radians per second, and capital omega is equal to 2 pi times capital F, where capital F is the frequency in hertz. Capital T is the sampling interval, and therefore this is equal to 1 over f, capital F subscript t, the sampling frequency, and this can also be written as 2 pi divided by capital omega t. This is as far as symbols goes. We must reserve small omega for the main obsession of ours, namely digital signal processing. Small omega shall be reserved for normalized digital frequency. How it comes through will be very, we have already said how it comes through, we shall say it again, because truth should be repeated as many times as possible, then it gets imprinted in the mind, not irrelevant truth, relevant truth. Okay? And we also know that g of n can be represented in the frequency domain by capital G of e to the power j omega, where this omega is now the normalized digital frequency. So, we are interested in the interrelationship between capital G A j omega and capital G of e to the power j omega. In order to do that, we idealize the sampling waveform, to a sequence of impulses. That is, we idealize this sampling. Actually, it is done by rectangular waveforms, okay? Rectangular pulses of short duration and large height. Now, we can, as a limit, we can treat this as an impulse, although this is not true in practice. We cannot generate an impulse in the laboratory. All we can generate is a high amplitude pulse with short duration. The only distortion that occurs is that the spectrum is amplitude modulated by the spectrum of the rectangular pulse, and if the duration is small enough, then that modulation can be ignored, and therefore there is not much of a deviation from practice. But when you go from rectangular pulse to an impulse, the mathematics is drastically simplified, all right, and there is not much deviation in the actual results, and for an engineer whatever works is good enough, a tool. Okay. So, we idealize this as delta t minus nt, n going from minus infinity to plus infinity. This is the waveform with which we multiply g a of t to get the sampled signal. Let us call the sample signal as g s of t. You understand why we used capital F subscript capital T for sampling frequency instead of Fs, because we reserve S for the sampled waveform subscript. Okay? And this you can write as summation n equal to minus infinity to infinity. You can take GAT inside, all right. You can take GAT inside, and when it goes inside, it becomes GANT delta t minus nt. So, this becomes the sampled waveform. In other words, the sampled waveform is a chain of impulses whose strengths are Ga and T. Strength means the area under the impulse. Okay? And if I take the Fourier transform of this, then I get Gs of j omega as equal to summation n equal to minus infinity to infinity GANT e to the power minus j omega n t. All right. This is the Fourier transform of delta t minus nt. Fourier transform of delta t is 1 and delta t minus nt, it is multiplied by this exponential. Now, this is not a very useful form except for establishing the relationship between small omega and capital omega. You know, g of e to the j omega is n minus infinity to infinity g of n e to the minus j n omega, and these two must be identical. If we take g a n t as equal to g n, that is we ignore quantization error, then this must be identical, which means that small omega must be equal to capital omega t, as we have said earlier. In other words, the normalized digital frequency is omega divided by f t, and you can write this as 2 pi f divided by f t, all right, f divided by f t, or you can also write, no, have I written this correctly? Yes. Okay. Now if I write f t, how do I write? Oh, I can also write this as 2 pi omega divided by omega t. Agree? I can also write it like this. So small omega, I repeat after 18 lectures, that it's a normalized digital frequency, and the unit is simply, it is dimensionless, but it is expressed in radian. Radian is a dimensionless quantity because it's a ratio of length to length, arc divided by radius, it's a length to length. So radian does not have a unit. Omega is expressed in radian. And also know that because of the sampling requirement by the sampling theorem, omega should not exceed omega t by 2. In other words, omega lies between omega t by 2 minus omega t by 2 to plus omega t by 2. If that is true, then small omega must be less than pi. In other words, the range of small omega is minus pi to plus pi. That's all. In analog, we have to go from minus infinity to plus infinity. So doubly infinite, that length has been compressed to our advantage to minus pi to plus pi. So in a sense, DSP is a much simpler concept than ASP, but it has also its own disadvantages. Well, now in order to see how GS of j omega and GA of j omega are related to each other, we make an alternative representation of the impulse train which samples the waveform, that is Pt is equal to delta t minus nt, n equal to minus infinity to infinity. It is a periodic waveform and therefore can be expanded in Fourier series. In Fourier series, so it can be expanded as e to the power j k. What is the frequency? Radian frequency, omega sub capital T, j k omega t, and it has to be a summation k equal to minus infinity to plus infinity, because this is a real sequence. This must be minus infinity to plus infinity, and then a Fourier coefficient, which turns out very simply is as equal to 1 by t. All right. Now if I use this representation, then my GS of t, the sampled waveform, therefore becomes we had already written this, GNT delta t minus nt. Then I can write this as 1 by t when I express this summation delta t minus nt in Fourier series. That is, if I substitute, I should have written this as summation. Okay, I write this as GAT multiplied by PT. When I represent PT by this Fourier series, then my representation becomes 1 by T GAT multiplied by e to the power j k omega t. k goes from minus infinity to plus infinity. Okay. I can also write this as GAT. Who prevents me? Right? I wrote GANT because delta t minus NT exists at t equal to NT only. I can also write this as GAT, no harm. And since summation delta t minus NT has been expressed in Fourier series, I substitute that. Let me repeat, since there is a confusion. Originally GST was equal to GAT multiplied by PT, and I write this as GAT 1 by T summation k equal to minus infinity to plus infinity e to the power j k omega t. I made a mistake in the previous slide. There must be a t here. It's a Fourier series. There must be a t here, small t. Agreed? So it would be e to the power j k omega t t. Now this summation is over k, and therefore I can take GAT inside, e to the power j k omega t t, k equals minus infinity to plus infinity. That is the representation that I had used. Now if I take Fourier transform of both sides, then I get 1 over t summation k equal to minus infinity to plus infinity capital GA omega minus k omega t, right? And therefore the sample spectrum is a superposition of the base spectrum. The base spectrum occurs for k equal to 0. The base band spectrum is k equal to 0, and then the harmonics present in PT, they show their teeth. That is, the same spectrum is then shifted plus omega t on the right, minus omega t on the left, plus 2 omega t on the right, minus 2 omega t, and so on ad infinitum to the left and to the right also. So it is a superposition of all these spectra. If you understand this, can I write this as omega plus k omega t? Instead of minus sign, could we write this as plus? Would it make a difference? No, because k goes from minus infinity to plus infinity. Okay. So in order to understand this, we usually take a hypothetical base band spectrum like this, okay, which goes from minus omega h to plus omega h, and omega h being less than omega t by 2, minus omega t by 2, and then we have omega t somewhere here, minus omega t somewhere here, and we shall have a repetition of this, that is, this is the base band spectrum, and the sample spectrum would be repetition of this at every capital omega subscript t. So what happens at 0 happens here also. The only change is that the amplitude now becomes 1 by t. That is correct. That was because of the Fourier series expansion. Amplitude becomes 1 by t. So this would be omega t minus omega h, and this would be omega t plus omega h, and similarly for the left hand side we shall have a triangle like this. All right. These are even because the signal, given signal, was real. Okay. And you understand that the shape of the baseband spectrum is retained only if omega h is less than omega t by 2. Okay. So, shape of G A j omega retained if omega h is less than omega t by 2, which in other words, that is omega t is greater than twice omega h. It can also be equal. It can also be equal. So, omega t greater than equal to twice omega h. The shape shall be retained. And this is the famous sampling theorem. That is, the spectrum of the original signal and spectrum and time domain signal are in 1-to-1 correspondence. So, if we can retain the spectrum, we also retain the original signal, all right. So, it can be retained only if the sampling frequency is at least twice the highest frequency content of the signal. Okay. This is the sampling theorem. On the other hand, if this is not the case, for example, if we have omega h greater than omega t by 2, this is omega h and somewhere here is omega t by 2, then we shall have superpositions like this and so on to the left hand side also, and the composite waveform, composite spectrum would now be something like this, from which there is no way that you can recover the original spectrum. And this is a case of aliasing distortion. We had taken a numerical example early in the course to show how aliasing distortion occurs, how high frequencies like 13 hertz poses as 7 hertz, okay, and that is why the name aliasing occurred. Here also you can see that this actually is a higher frequency, which a point here for example is a higher frequency which poses as a low frequency, and that is what aliasing distortion means. The fact of the matter is that aliasing distortion cannot be completely removed, because no signal in practice is band limited like this. No signal in practice is band limited, and therefore, that is why you require that analog low pass filter at the front end. The input analog signal is first filtered through a low pass filter, and the purpose of that is to constrain the bandwidth, that is, you retain what you want. For example, in digital telephony you have to limit the spectrum to 3.4 kilohertz. Well, you are free to take it to 20 kilohertz, but you also have to be prepared to pay the cost of a higher bandwidth. Essential bandwidth is 3.4 kilohertz, and therefore the low pass filter retains only up to 4 kilohertz. But no low pass filter is ideal. You know, an ideal low pass filter is non-realizable and also unstable. Even if it could be realized, it is unstable, and therefore that filter also cannot cut off in an ideal manner, and therefore some high frequencies, maybe of very small magnitudes, shall be retained as long as the aliasing distortion does not hamper with the main objective of recovering our original signal. As long as it does not distort to a large extent, it is acceptable. Life is compromised, not only here, in every aspect, and therefore this is no deviation, this is no exception. All right. Now, so we have, in a way, we have proved the sampling theorem. In order to reconstruct the in order to recover the original signal from the sample spectrum, we require a low pass filter whose magnitude H A j omega should be equal to T for omega less than omega c, a cutoff frequency. It should be 0 ideally for omega greater than omega c, where omega c itself must be restricted to, you see, this is omega h, this is omega t by 2, and how much is this? Omega t minus omega h. So the cutoff frequency can be anywhere between omega h and omega t minus omega h, all right. So cutoff frequency itself lies between omega h and omega t minus omega h. In practice, things become simpler, the mathematics become simpler if omega c is chosen as omega t by 2, that is half the sampling frequency. Half the sampling frequency is also called the Nyquist frequency. This band minus omega t by 2 to plus omega t by 2, these are matters of nomenclature. This is also called the Nyquist band or the base band. We shall refer to them by various names, although they mean the same. Before we understand, before we take up the question of reconstruction filter, we know the reconstruction filter, ideal filter is not, such a filter is not realizable, okay, not realizable. But in the process of getting the impulse response, we have already done so in the case of a digital filter. We have found out h of n corresponding to an ideal low pass filter. Now we shall find out h a of t for the analog filter. It will be very similar. We shall find that out. But before we find that out, okay, let's find that out first. What we have is g a t delta t minus n t summation n equal to minus infinity to plus infinity. This is my GST, the sample signal. Now the processing is in the frequency domain, that is, I could have written capital GS of j omega should be passed through either this or this. We can look at it either in the time domain or in the frequency domain, passed through a low pass filter, let us say of impulse response h a of t, to give you what? The recovery, it is the recovery. It should give you g a of t. This is what you want ideally. Now if the ideal filter, the characteristic of the ideal filter we have already written, that is capital H of j omega is equal to capital T for mod omega less than omega c and 0 for mod omega greater than omega c, and omega c itself is restricted to lie between omega h and omega t. Now therefore h a of t is obtained by the inverse Fourier transform, that is 1 over 2 pi integral minus infinity to plus infinity h a of j omega e to the power j, yes, omega t, then d omega. Now for reasons said earlier, it is an ideal, if we aim for an ideal low pass filter, we have to go from minus omega c to plus omega c, and within this region this is equal to capital T. So it will be only t by 2 pi. Now it is very easy to integrate this e to the j omega t divided by j omega from t equal to minus omega c to plus omega c. In addition, as I had told you, if I assume that omega c equal to omega t by 2 as is usually taken, we cannot realize this filter. We are assuming that omega c equal to omega t by 2 to get a formula for the reconstruction filter and this formula comes out as Ga of t is equal to summation, it would be the convolution of Ga n t with h t, Ga n t h t, therefore we shall get h of t minus tau, and the result that we get is g of n sine of pi t minus n t divided by capital T divided by pi t minus n t divided by capital T. Do you understand how this is obtained? H of t shall now become h of t minus n t in the convolution. Gnt remains the same and we represent this by Gn, and the integral makes it e to the j omega t divided by j omega, and when you take the two limits we get a sign, okay, because j is in the denominator. That is how you obtain this, where unfortunately n has to go from minus infinity to plus infinity. Not only it is not hardware realizable, it is not software computable either. Isn't that right? Because you have to go from minus infinity to plus infinity. Usually one restricts this, if you are interested in the original signal as a function of time, usually one restricts this to a large enough value, maybe minus 300 to plus 300, okay, and you assume that this is a reasonable approximation to the given function. Why is it logical to assume that it is a reasonable approximation? Yes, because you know h of t, h a of t shall look like a sinc function, is a main lobe and then goes on decreasing. Therefore, if you go for sufficiently large interval including the main lobe in the middle, then you are reasonably sure that it would be a reasonable approximation. Point home? Has the point gone home? What I am saying is, you do not have to go from minus infinity to plus infinity. A large value, let us say 210 to plus 210 should suffice, because h of t itself is like this. It is a decaying sinusoid on both sides, and therefore if you restrict your time interval to a value beyond which the amplitude is negligible, you will get a reasonable approximation of GAT. There are many research papers on this reconstruction formula, how to compute it, and there was a PhD student here, part of his work was on this. He used a differentiator for this purpose and computed this with less complexity, that is less number of multiplications and additions than what is required for direct computation. Reconstruction formula is an important formula and you should remember this. Now therefore, our concern now is these two low pass filters, that is, one is band constraining, how good low pass filters they are shall determine how good your DSP is of the analog signal. One is the front end low pass filter and the other is the what is it called? The other end? Reconstruction filter. Okay. Both of these have to be low pass filters. And in very simple industrial situations, for example in digital telephony or digital stereo, one is a simple RC low pass filters. But one who has done the course, well, they do it because they want to keep the cost as low as possible. Okay? But then there is a problem. This capacitance, if it is digital stereo for example, it is a large capacitance which cannot be integrated. Okay? Integration of a very large capacitor requires a lot of silicon area, and therefore you have a problem there. So we would like to investigate how very good filters can be designed, higher order filters, cost will be higher, but we shall be able to avoid as much aliasing distortion as possible. So our next topic for study should be analog low pass filters. But before we do that, I would like to have a brief discussion about sampling of a band pass signal. So far we have talked about a low pass signal, that is, we talked about a signal like this, spectrum like this. It contains 0 frequency and the highest frequency is omega h. This is called a low pass signal. It contains low frequency starting from 0. But suppose you have a signal like this, signal whose spectrum, it cannot be band limited in practice. We show this as a band limited to keep our life simple, to keep mathematics simple, and then if it is a real signal you shall have minus omega 1 and minus omega 2 also. Suppose we have a band pass signal like this, where the envelope I have shown for simplicity as flat, it may not be flat. It may be something like this, then it should fall like this and so on. Okay? How do we sample this? By sampling theorem we require omega t greater than equal to twice omega 2, the highest frequency. But it turns out that omega t greater than equal to twice the bandwidth is good enough. Twice the bandwidth, that is omega 2 minus omega 1, that is good enough. Now the underlying reason is that although this may not satisfy the sampling theorem, sampling at this rate makes a repetition of these two spectra in such a manner that both of them shall come within the baseband. And since the shape remains the same, we can do the further processing in the baseband only. We would not like to do a rigorous mathematical analysis, but let me illustrate with a very simple example. Suppose we have a band pass signal from, let us say, 75 hertz to 80 hertz. Then we shall have minus 75 and minus 80 also. And let us sample this waveform at exactly 10 hertz. Obviously we should have required 160 hertz as the minimum, but twice the bandwidth is 10 hertz. Let us say we do this at 10 hertz. If we do that, then this same waveform, same shape shall be repeated infinite number of times on the right and also on the left, according to the formula 10 times an integer n, let us say, or should we use k? We used a k. So let us use k, 10k plus minus this range 75, that is 75 will go as 10k plus minus 75 and 10k plus minus 80. Okay? Suppose k is equal to 7. then this gives you with a negative sign. Let us take the negative sign. With the negative sign, this will give you minus 5 and k equal to 7, 17. No, let us take k equal to 8. K equal to 8. Then this becomes plus 5 and this becomes 0. 80 minus 80. And therefore, what happens between 75 and 80 now is repeated between 0 and 5. Similarly, if you take k equal to 7, then you get minus 5 to 0, all right, and therefore this same spectrum comes within the baseband. The shape remains the same spectrum comes within the baseband. We do not have to process the signal beyond what would be the cutoff frequency required for the low pass filter, 5 hertz, and that we can do with a much less costly low pass filter. Bandwidth is very small and all processing is done at the baseband, which is much lower frequency. Our frequency range now is minus 5 to plus 5. We do not have to go to high frequencies.
Sir, if it is not, if the sampling frequency is not integer multiple of 5,
okay,
then there will be distortion, sir.
If the sampling frequency
is not integer multiple of 5, that if we take 12 hertz, then there will be distortion.
Yes, that is correct, but the distortion has to be contained. In fact, we shall not get a low pass filter then if the sampling frequency is higher than twice omega 2 minus omega 1, then the shift will not be right up to DC. That would be distortion. There is a possibility of you cannot say distortion will occur. No, there is a possibility of distortion, but we can contain the distortion. We can avoid the distortion. Distortion shall definitely occur if omega t is less than twice the bandwidth. But if it is higher than twice the bandwidth, distortion should not occur. You draw the waveforms and verify for yourself. But there would be a difference in the filter requirement. You see, if our waveform comes like this, this end does not come quite to 0. It will come to 0 only if the omega t is an integral multiple of, that is twice the bandwidth. It will come to 0, but it may not come to 0. If we use a higher frequency, it may not come to 0. So what we will require now is either a low pass filter whose cutoff frequency is this, that is higher cutoff frequency, no longer 5 hertz, it could be 15, or a band pass filter whose bandwidth is 5 hertz. Is that clear? But in either case, the hardware required is much less costly and much simpler. The basic point that I am making here is, we may not use it in DSP, but you should know that for a low pass signal, sampling frequency constrains the sampling theorem constrains the sampling frequency to be at least twice the highest frequency content. Whereas for a band pass signal, the sampling frequency required is at least twice the bandwidth, which can be a much smaller frequency. What I am talking of 75 could be a 75 megahertz and 80 megahertz. Then you require 10 megahertz as the sampling frequency. You do not have to go to 160 megahertz. The higher the sampling frequency, the more complex is the hardware. In fact, beyond 10 megahertz sampling, I think I showed it in the first or second lecture, sampling now at the present moment cannot go beyond about 10 megahertz. The hardware is limited. Beyond that, the parasitic capacitances take over, and you cannot make a switch which closes and opens every 0.1 microsecond. Less than that, it is impossible. The state of the art is like this. Now, coming back to low pass filters, analog. So, we enter into the domain. The next few lectures, except tomorrow will be problem session. The next few lectures would be on analog filter design, and this will be a review. I will not do everything in analog filter design. I will only talk about approximation of analog filters and the motivations. What is the motivation for describing or discussing analog filter design in a DSP course? One is that we require analog filters at the transmitting end and also the receiving end. We require analog filters. Therefore, we should know about analog filters. More importantly, analog filter design forms the basis of IIR, digital filter design. The most useful form of IIR digital filter comes from a knowledge of analog filters by transformation. We know how to design an analog filter because analog filter is age old, some more than 100 years old, the techniques of analog filter design, and therefore they are available in handbooks, in filter design tables and so on and so forth. Everything is known about analog filters. So, we make that as a base and make a frequency transformation to get a digital filter. So, these are two reasons why we discuss analog filter design in great details. Now, for the DSP of analog signals, we require only 2 low pass filters. So, it should suffice for us to consider only low pass filters. But if you want to design IIR digital filters of various kinds like band stop and band pass or multi-band pass filters, you require other kinds of filters as well. But it turns out, this is the beauty of nature in general and electrical engineering in particular, it turns out that if you know how to design a low pass filter, then you know how to design any other kind of filter, because a low pass filter can be transformed to any other kind of filter, can be transformed, and therefore if you know how to design a low pass filter, you know how to design any other kind of filter. Therefore, our focus shall be on an analog low pass filter design only. In analog low pass filter design also there are various techniques. The ones that are most important in practice are generated by 2 considerations. One is that the filter design must be simple. If you spend 80 man hours in designing a filter, well, you have already hiked up the price of the product and the product may not sell. Is it clear? If you put 80 man hours, let us say 20 engineers for 4 hours each, they have already spent on their salary the infrastructure and everything. Therefore, the product that you are going to design, that cost has to be incorporated and people will not buy it. There will be competitors who will design. So, there one has to make a compromise. One has to make a compromise between simplicity of the filter design and satisfying the specs. The specifications have to be satisfied. The same specs can be satisfied by many different kinds of filters. And the filter that is the best or the optimum is the elliptic filter. But then elliptic filters are very difficult to design. They require much effort in design. As compared to elliptic filters, these are the optimum. You cannot do better than elliptic. As compared to elliptic filters, Butterworth and Chebyshev types, Butterworth and Chebyshev, they are much simpler to design. They can be designed from analytical formulas, whereas elliptic filters of necessity require computational complexity. No generalizations are possible for elliptic filters. Even the tables that are made, that are given, They are given at discrete intervals of tolerances, 0.5 dB, 0.6 dB. If you require 0.52, then you have to compute yourself. Okay. On the other hand, Butterworth and Chebyshev can be designed analytically. That is, we have formulas, we have analytical formulas for computing the transfer functions of Butterworth and Chebyshev, and therefore we shall discuss, starting Monday lecture, we shall discuss Butterworth and Chebyshev low pass filters. All right. We would make a kind of a review. In other words, I will outline the steps, but I